Knowledge for Men, episode 107. Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, where you're going to grow into the man you want to be. Your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee it. Hey guys, just wanted to offer you a free gift here as a part of being a listener of my show. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can get the top 30 books and top 30 success quotes that every man must live by. So obviously every show we talk about books and we talk about success quotes. And so I've compiled the best of the best out of the last 100 episodes into a short guide. So kfmfree.com and it's all yours. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Michaela Boehm. She's amongst one of the most gifted counselors and teachers in the world today. She received degrees in psychology from the University of Vienna and extensive training in cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis, NLP, and yoga. Michaela has been a counselor to stars in Hollywood, working with the best actors, directors, producers, writers, musicians, and entrepreneurs. Michaela began studying with David Deida, the author of The Way of the Superior Man, from 1997 till now, and is the only trainer in the world personally trained and authorized by David Deida. Michaela, it's an honor to have you on the show here today.
Thank you. That was quite a handful of an introduction.
All right. And so now, Michaela, let's jump in with a favorite success quote of yours or something that you've lived by as saying, and explain to the audience why you chose this.
Well, since you just asked me this a few seconds ago, I couldn't find something more fitting than my favorite quote, which is not an easy one to explain. It's a Rumi quote, actually, that's called, "Set your life on fire, seek those who fan the flames." Essentially, for me, that's always the wantingness to push the edge and go further than I would want to go, at any given time. So it's always kind of an edgy moment.
Seek those who fan your flames. It sounds like surrounding yourself with the right people who can elevate you and push you further.
Yes, but when you set your life on fire, that means you're having people stir up trouble and support your passion at the same time. Yes.
Right. So not only just challenging you, but surround yourself with those who aren't afraid to step up and tell you when you're out of line.
Yeah.
Right. And I know I gave quite the intro in the beginning, but
Yeah. Somewhat embarrassing. It's all true.
yeah, I mean, it's all true. So, I mean, let's hear it from you though. Let's backstep a few and let's go into your story. How did you get started with what you do? It's just so interesting.
Well, I think what would make more sense, because I have such a varied education and such a multifold life. I think what would be good is if you can kind of narrow it down to what would you think is the most interesting for your listeners to hear. How did I get where I'm at, or what motivated me? There's so many aspects to it. So if you can refine it a little bit for me, that would probably be helpful.
Right. I am most interested in the topic of finding your life's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michaela, how did you find your purpose and what series of events led you into the space you're in now?
Well, yeah, I think life's purpose is a huge deal. And I know your show is called Knowledge for Men. Purpose is a very specifically masculine endeavor. Now, that's not to say that a woman doesn't have a purpose. It's her masculine that has a purpose. Her feminine has a heart's yearning, but her masculine has a purpose. So I had a pretty strong purpose and also a very strong heart's yearning from when I was probably about 14, 15, at which point my only career goal literally was to become a sorceress and an herb witch with a herb garden in the house where people could sneak in the back door and get help and advice and herbal remedies. So that was kind of my career goal when I was 15.
I've never heard of this. You said sorceress. So I'm like, wow.
Yes, I did. And I mean, with 14, you have grand ambitions in a certain way. And I grew up in Austria, where there's a very strong tradition of herbal healing and kind of a supernatural healing. So that was my career goal. And I have to really say very happily that I've kind of achieved that in a different way. I have one client, my main client, he calls me supernatural aid. It's kind of a joke, but I don't know if you know that in the hero's journey, in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, there is a woman that is supernatural aid, and she has potions and amulets, and she knows things, and she supports the hero on his journey so he can fulfill his destiny. And that's essentially what I've become in a certain way. And it's incredibly pleasing to me that, 30 something years into living my purpose, I've kind of achieved my goal in a slightly more mature way
Right.
than the herb witch and sorceress. But that particular purpose of supporting people and supplying the tools and instruments for their growth and secondarily healing, it's much more growth, is what's driven me throughout my education, throughout my own studies, and throughout my own exploration. It's always been about what are the tools, how do you motivate that, and how can you support that in others.
Huh. And so, since this is your purpose and the things you're doing are helping people, sometimes you sense a pain in yourself when you sense that someone is just off their purpose. They're not living their purpose, and it's very clear to you.
I would be lying if I say no. Yes, I do. I can be at times fairly impatient and judgmental in the first round of exploration, and then I'll relax and I give people exactly what they need so that they get unstuck. But yes, I think particularly when I work with a lot more men than women these days, just because I think purpose is really something that's lacking in a lot of men, I sometimes can get quite turned off or impatient when people are so clearly off purpose. And then the secondary thing is pain. And then, of course, comes the motivation to help and support and get unstuck.
And now, Michaela, how can men better embody the masculine, step in their masculine? And since living with purpose is a core element of the masculine, what else is there?
Well, it's the core element. And what else is there underneath that? There is more. And so, the reason why purpose is such an important element in being a strong masculine, a strong man, is that when a man doesn't know where it's going, he can't lead there, neither in his organization nor his woman. And so trust, which is the very core of what makes a woman attracted to a man, and also what makes a man be financially successful, because nobody gives you money if you're not trustable. Trust is essentially the feeling that the man has a strong purpose, and he also is capable of following through on this purpose. So the deeper element of that, of course, is when you know your purpose, then you live every moment of your life according and aligned to that, which means that you have a certain integrity to something bigger than the specific moment, which then once again engenders trust. And then underneath that is essentially the knowledge that, and this is the important piece, right? The knowledge that all of this is essentially, I want to say futile, and futile in the way that we're all going to die. Sooner or later, everything we know will disappear. And the feeling one's death is the underlying foundation of having a purpose, because you're pretty much saying, well, it's all coming to an end, but while it's not, let me do the very deepest work or the deepest offering I can do. Might as well.
And you mentioned something that really stood out to me, which was about trust and the importance of trust in business and with women.
Yeah.
So, what makes a man trustworthy?
Well, once again, the first thing that makes a man trustworthy is that he knows where it's going. That's his purpose. And he has a clear direction towards that purpose. And if he doesn't know what his purpose is, he is steadfastly exploring. His mission is to find his purpose, essentially. And within that, then what makes him trustable is if he doesn't compromise on his path towards his purpose. So, what that means is clarity of direction, clarity of action, not getting sidetracked, having integrity, essentially not saying one thing and doing another, and more importantly, within the integrity, not getting sidetracked and distracted.
Huh. Yeah, the things you said, you know where you are, you know where you'd like to go, and you're working towards that. I feel like when you're doing this, it really just eliminates neediness, laziness, procrastination. A lot of that stuff just goes away because that's the stuff that's preventing you from living your purpose and it's
Hmm.
getting in the way. So I think when a man finds his purpose, he automatically eliminates the unnecessary and work towards what is only necessary in his life.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And then that makes him trustable. Because once again, the same principles apply in business than they apply with a woman, right? If you have money to invest, are you going to give your money to a guy who, he doesn't even have his own apartment? He's late. He tells you one thing and does another. He never calls when he says he calls. No, you wouldn't. And the same is true for a woman. A woman wouldn't actually trust a man who isn't straight in those areas because the underlying biological function of a woman trusting a man is that he will be able to provide for her and the children. Now, that's changed, of course, because most women can utterly provide for themselves financially, but the feeling of needing somebody who can be trusted with direction and with purpose and with children is super important. So, once again, money and women have the exact same rules in trustability.
And that's a really interesting point about women being able to provide for themselves. Just that alone, that's huge. Because if we look at the last 50 years in history, more women are getting higher education, going to school, getting higher level job positions, and they're not stuck in these clerical positions or in the house where they were reliant on men as a financial resource in history. This is true in history.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
was the
Hmm.
norm. So now my question is, how is this changing the dynamics of the masculine and feminine polarity when the man feels like he simply isn't needed as much as he once was?
Well, and that's true, right? They're not needed in the classic sense. The days of, I'll bring home the bacon, you take care of the kids and look pretty when you come home, when I come home, little woman, right? Those days are clearly over. And most women no longer need men for security, for income, for protection, even, none of these things. But underneath, and this is the really important piece that's become, kind of the crucial part of when I go out and teach, is that underneath nothing's changed. But underneath, women still want to be ravished. They still want to be taken. They still want to be opened. They still want to be felt and seen and known better than they can understand themselves. That hasn't changed. It just goes through different avenues than money and career and status. And so, no, in the classic sense, women don't need men anymore. In the more subtle and refined and deeper sense, we need men more than we ever have because it's no longer available to us. So this is always a very controversial topic. And for every time I say that, there's lots of women who go, well, that's not true for me. And that's true, right? This is not yet true for every woman. But for many women and many women I work with, including myself, the feeling is something like, well, I make decisions all day, every day, and I do. I run several businesses. I teach. I travel. I consult. I mean, I have a life I have more employees than I care for. Personal assistants, farm hands, housekeepers. All kinds of people who require that I give them strong direction and that I align them according to the biggest purpose. So those are clearly masculine acts and activities that I engage in every day, all day. And when I teach, I'm responsible for giving every single human in my room the strongest direction. I keep an overview and I hold a strong, safe container. So at the end of the day, my masculine has been worked out and I'm really good at it and I love it. But when I come home, the last thing I want to do is now give my man direction.
Because when you come home, you just want to relax into your feminine and not be in the masculine role.
That I want to experience the feminine. Exactly. And now here's the interesting thing. It's much easier for a man to receive the feminine from other places than a woman. than it is for a woman to receive the masculine from any other place than a man. And so, even though we're so advanced in many which ways, we can't actually get into the surrendered open state without a man that we can trust, because it requires that we surrender that part of us, the thinking, directing, purposeful part. And you don't surrender and open and become kind of a whatever blabbering mass of bliss and pleasure with a guy who's not trustable. It's not possible. And if a man doesn't have strong penetration and strong thrust, he can't open a woman that way. And hence, there's a lot of women who are very frustrated, and they're very tight, and they're very tense, and they're very masculine, because there isn't anybody who opens them like that. So the need for men who are capable of doing that is greater than ever. And so that's the new need, not the I'll take care of you, baby, while you have the babies, and why don't you cook for me need, but the need for a man to be able to take over and alleviate some of the tension that we can't alleviate ourselves.
And so with today, a man can't simply hide behind a good job, a home, a car,
That's
which are all very
correct.
good things to have, yet those things just have less weight than they did decades or even generations ago. So, in order for a man to show up, he has to truly be a masculine male and not hide behind financial means. Now, earlier you mentioned a man needs to come home and penetrate and thrust. So can you elaborate on this? Because I think you're talking about something deeper, something other than sex here.
Yes, well, once again, the deeper is he can't do that if he doesn't know where it's going, right? Because otherwise it's just going to feel like a chore. So when you have when you're in a relationship and your woman needs that kind of relief, that it takes some work to do that, because of course when a woman's been in her masculine all day, when she comes home, she doesn't just flop down and say, oh, I'm surrendered. She's like, did you do this? Did you do that? What about this? I want to, where are we going to eat? And it's this thing that perpetuates itself. And so to be able to slice through that takes some fortitude and some depth and some strength. And you can't have that depth and strength unless you have a bigger picture in mind, which is you want the deepest intimate relationship that you can have, and you know where that relationship is going. And so the thrust comes from the motivation to guide towards something that's mutually good for both partners. And the motivation to apply that kind of penetration is the motivation of liking to organize and structure and open things.
Huh. Can you elaborate on that last sentence there?
Yes. So, have you ever had a moment where, it could be a mathematical equation or some business plan or some kind of a challenge that feels fairly impossible? Yeah, exactly. And there is an itch to want to do that, right? You want to penetrate that. I'm going to say this how it needs to be said. I'm hoping nobody gets too offended. But essentially, you want to fuck that, right? You want to fuck it open. That's the feeling. You want to penetrate it and open it. And that's the masculine disposition towards solving something. It has a very specific kind of a thrust that's almost sexual. That's why I use the word. And you have to have that kind of disposition towards your woman, because if you don't, and if you think that you're just doing that so you get peace and quiet, it's going to kill you.
Huh. So what I'm getting from you is it sounds like that buildup of sexual attention within a man can be channeled to fuck the world,
Exactly.
to challenge yourself,
Exactly.
and to take more risk in your life. But I think that is the challenge right there, because I know a lot of men experience this where they know what they want, to do. They are, their heart is pushing them in a direction, and it's telling them, it's calling them to do something, but they're afraid to actually do it and take action.
Yeah.
Even though their heart is calling them, they're unable to take that risk. So what's going on here?
Hmm. Well, Parts of it is, you should say, depending on what day you're asking me, I would say it's fear of failure, it's fear of success, or it's laziness, or all of the above. I mean, we're human, and humans are much better with the status quo than with something that's new. That's just how we're built. And the reason we are built like that is for evolutionary reasons. The thing that hasn't killed us is the thing we want to do. Anything new could potentially kill us, so it needs to be avoided. So, on a very deep level, humans are very averse to change and risk and making big steps because we want to live, on a very, very deep cellular level. And that's why, once again, the purpose and the knowledge of one's death and having essentially made peace with one's death, which is, one of the biggest masculine virtues, so to speak, is so important because once you're no longer motivated by not dying, you can actually take risks.
Yeah, this is a really good topic. I like this. I'm currently reading a book called The Way of the Samurai, and one of the rituals they go through is they have to die
Hmm.
and accept that they're already dead, as one of the rituals that a samurai has to go through in order to become a samurai. And it's this ability to believe that they are already dead that allows them to be the fearless warriors that, still today are revered thousands of years later.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And so, feeling one's death, making peace with one's death, confronting one's death, all of those things are incredibly important because once you've done that, then you're no longer held back by the very thing that you're built for. Essentially transcending the evolutionary knee jerk. That doesn't mean that if a wild animal comes at you, you just lay down. Of course, you're gonna go into fight or flight, but the imaginary stretch of moving to a new city isn't going to make you feel like you're dying, and that's the important piece.
Huh. Now, this is kind of going into the direction of the dark side of a man, the killer instincts inside of a man. So, I want to talk about this. I think this is really important and a subject that isn't really openly discussed. So, how can guys bring this side out more to help them assert themselves more into the world?
Mm.
Is this your favorite side of the man?
Yeah, of course. That's everyone's favorite side. In every workshop we do, both when David and I do, 3-day intensives and when I teach longer classes or even day longs, the women always go, more killer, more killer. And the guys always like, huh? Because of course, when you are a man, you are essentially from a very young age told that you don't want to, you're not supposed to kill things. You're not supposed to destroy things. You're supposed to be sensitive, and beating things and hitting things and killing things is not good, and that's true. But this brings us back to the samurai. The samurai had to essentially kill himself if he killed with a closed heart. And so the ability to kill with an open heart is what translates into the dark side for a woman. And what that means is that once again, you slay the obstacles, you slay her, you slay life, you slay your problems with the kind of ruthlessness of knowing what needs to be killed and what needs to be nurtured for the biggest possible opening. And no woman wants an actual killer, but every woman wants to know that if push comes to shove and somebody comes through the door with a huge machete, the guy doesn't go, honey, take care of this, please. But, he could actually kill if need be. And that's the kind of feeling that swoons every woman. And what it is the ability to slice through anything for the sake of love.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful ways that a man could step into that protector role and, to truly defend, the person or woman that you love.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so now the opposite of being this strong masculine male, I think would be the guy who feels like he's a victim.
Right, or soft or whiny.
and
Yeah.
has all the excuses, or just has one excuse as to why he can't be the man that he would like to be.
Right.
He constantly points to this excuse or that excuse, and doesn't assert himself into the world because he feels like he's a victim.
Exactly. Right.
Any advice for these guys?
Well, I mean, this is where good therapy comes in, right? If you've really been victimized, or if you have alcohol problems, or whatever people use as an excuse, I'm not responsible for that. I'm an alcoholic. I mean, you hear those things all the time. The important piece is to have enough therapy around that one understands that there's, even in the most heinous circumstances, there's always room for empowerment. And people have horrible things happen to them, and that's not to be discounted. And having an abuse, alcohol abuse issue is nothing to be discounted. That's not what I'm saying. But even within that, there's people who go to meetings and they help others and they empower themselves and they're not victimized by their addictions or by their traumas. And then there's other people who hide behind that so that they don't have to step up. And therapy is definitely a good thing to do when there's still traces of that apparent. I want to say one more thing about the dark side or the killer. The killer and the dark side, of course, sexually means, once again, what I said earlier, that you want to penetrate and organize and align the chaos of the feminine temporarily for the sake of the greatest opening. And so that takes some balls. That's the thing that makes a guy walk into a storm or jump off a cliff with a parachute or things like that. So somebody who jumps out of a capsule in the stratosphere and does the longest free fall or something like that has to have some balls and has to be not afraid of dying. And that kind of aspect then makes for kind of a good sexual flavor because there's a certain I don't care quality to it. And not I don't care as in I'm not loving and heart open, but I don't care because I'm not afraid of mommy.
So, in other words, he's removed his mouth from his mother's breast.
That is exactly right. Or he's cut the apron string and he doesn't need approval from his woman or any other woman. That doesn't mean he doesn't want to care for her or please her or love her, but also he's able to do what needs to be done for something much bigger than her temporary need
Yeah. So, can you tell if a man is still attached to
from
his
a
mother's
mile
breast?
away.
Okay. All right. No hesitation with that one.
And so can all other women. Now, there's women who like that kind of a flavor because it makes them not have to be a woman, really. They can just be a mother telling the little boy what to do, but it doesn't last. It's not a doable model for a relationship. Freedom, the ability to be unhooked, that goes along with the purpose where you were asking me earlier. That's really the greatest virtue, so to speak, that a man can have when he's free of death, free of need for approval, free of need for sex, free of need for money. And the way you get free is you know it's all for nothing and you do it anyway.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned something about aligning the chaos of the feminine. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, essentially, when you look at, when you were saying, when we were talking about fucking the world open or fucking a problem open, what you're doing is you're penetrating through something that feels chaotic or unsolvable or unknown, and you're making sense of it. So, if I give you some conundrum to fix in business, you're going to love it because you're going to do whatever it takes to kind of align this problem into the flow of where you want to go, right? Into the flow of your career, into the flow of your finances. And so one of the pleasant things for most masculine creatures, men and women alike, is to solve things, to fix things. And so, of course, the greater feminine, the swirling mass of chaotic, beautiful but chaotic energy can only be aligned temporarily to a great purpose, to a strong purpose. Any moment it can go completely wild again, like the weather. But that moment and any problem that you solve will eventually become another problem. That there's just a perpetuation of the unsolvable, chaotic nature of all existence. But anytime you get to organize the unsolvable, chaotic nature of existence for a moment, it just feels fantastic.
Yeah, it does. And I want to touch on now a major problem that I've noticed amongst men today, which is the topic of excessive masturbation and porn use today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's so easy to be online and have access to any type of fantasy or girl that you're interested in within just a few seconds. So, I mean, the way I see it is humans were never designed to have this much access to sexual fantasies at a man's fingertips.
Yes, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing per se. Once again, it's all a matter of how much you're aligned. I have kind of a slightly, I'm not anti-porn under any circumstance. I think that porn serves a very, very important function, but you have to have discipline around to have the ability to direct your use towards something, once again, bigger than just having a moment of relief. So I'm going to try and unpack this a little bit for you. So anything a man does to just temporarily not feel the pain of his existence is, of course, distracting him from his purpose. So for most guys, they masturbate excessively, or not whatever is excessive, because the not living their purpose and the pain of not being on course becomes so unpleasant that they have to do something to rid themselves of that. So that wouldn't be the best use of porn, clearly. Other people smoke, other people drink, other people shop. There's many, many which ways how people distract themselves from the basic fundamental pain of their existence. So that wouldn't be a good use of porn. And by all means, that needs to be disciplined. And it needs to be disciplined exactly like eating potato chips or not working out or watching too much TV needs to be disciplined. I don't think porn's any different than drinking too much or, spending 18 hours on some TV marathon. It's the same category. However, why men tend to do porn and not the Friends marathon, you know, is because once again, there is a very deep, innate, evolutionary, I want to say knee jerk, no pun intended, need for variety. So every man is built for variety because the way the human species has evolved is man would essentially inseminate as many young, fertile women as they could get their hands on to grant survival of their DNA. And so that's all they had to do. Women, so how they would choose women is as many as possible in as short a period of time. Because if you are essentially, having sex, we're talking, the Stone Ages and beyond. If you're having sex with as many women as you can find, that includes women with whom you shouldn't have sex more than women with whom you should have sex. So you better ejaculate very quickly because it's also dangerous. You're out there in nature, or or it's a woman of the neighboring tribe, or it's somebody else's woman. So essentially, all men alive today come from a long lineage of multiple variety fast ejaculators. Those are the genetics that survived. There's no ifs, whens, and buts about that. People who like to fuck trees, their genetic code didn't survive, right? So that said, the need for variety of flavor, of texture or spice, let's say, is inbuilt in a man. In a woman, that same kind of need for variety and spice and flavor is inbuilt in food and in shopping. Nowadays, it's shopping because women have become very disciplined with food. But in order for a woman to survive, she had to bring pregnancies to full term. She had to keep her body weight up so that she could ovulate and have a pregnancy and breastfeed. And when we're talking cave days, there were no fridges and 7-Eleven. So you had to eat all the berries and sweet stuff that you could find incessantly. So women tend to want lots of different flavors of food and ideally sweets and things like that. And nowadays, women want many different clothings and shoes and lipsticks. Men want many different varieties of women. Now, it's not feasible for many reasons, not only societal, or most women don't like their men to have lots of other girlfriends, even though that's changing in the, times of polyamory, which is a whole other topic. But essentially, it's also, if you run a business and you have things to do, you can't be constantly distracted by wanting other flavors, yet there it is, and you want other flavors. So porn, if people know how to use it responsibly, which most people don't know how to use because they have to numb, but if you would use it responsibly, you would use porn to get some of the spices or the flavors that you don't have in your woman, so that you don't get craven, so that you don't get distracted, so that you don't have to run off with your secretary or do other stupid things. So responsible porn use would be getting an occasional hit of a flavor that you don't usually get, so you're not distracted in your relationship and you're not distracted in your business.
So this is an interesting take on porn and masturbation, and almost being able to use it to channel those cravings and those sexual fantasies online with porn use, so that you don't actually do those things with other women that could hurt your relationship with your significant other or even your family. And as long as you're doing it with discipline.
Well, it's a tool. It's like a medicinal tool. Now, I'm sure I'll get crucified for this from certain people, but I know that in my practice and in my private practice and also in what I teach, when people have the discipline and knowledge, it's like a tonic or something, right? And so, but once again, for that you have to have discipline and you have to have insight and you need to know what you're doing. But when you look, for instance, at what kind of things men look at, there's stats on what porn sites are being visited and things like that. It's clearly things that men don't get.
So again, just further proof that the variety, using porn for variety and channeling that natural desire online versus having to act it out and potentially ruin a relationship.
Right, exactly. Like anything. I mean, there's no difference there. I mean, no woman would want to come home and find her guy with like 6 packs of potato chips gorging himself, right? And the same is true with with porn. I mean, there's insecurities that women have and all of that, but aside from that, proper porn use is like proper use of anything else. You just have to know what you're doing and be incredibly aware. And of course, there's a lot of men's groups and movements that say, don't watch any porn. And that might be the thing to do to disabuse somebody of the other habit and have them feel some of the pain that they're avoiding. But once you're over that, you can really use it medicinally.
Yeah, I think that can definitely help a lot of guys, with that take, trying to use it in a constructive way. I think that's a little, realistic. But for some guys, it could just be extremely addictive where it gets out of control. So my take on porn and masturbation is just don't do it. Dramatically reduce it if it's a current problem in your life. But overall, I think, we have similar opinions on that. But now, Michaela, it's time that we enter the knowledge round. So are you ready?
Sure.
All right, guys, if you're not reading books, then you're getting left behind. Somebody spent their entire life learning some invaluable lesson, and the best format that anyone could ever put it in is a book. It's the shortest, fastest, simplest way to consume content. So I know there are so many books available, and we talk about books all the time on the podcast, so there must be so many running through your head, and you're wondering, where do I begin? Well, I've compiled the top 30 books and success quotes from all of my guests in the last 100 episodes, so you can get them all for free. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can simply download the top 30 books that every man must live by. Again, that's kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, Michaela, first question here. What do you think is holding most men back from discovering their purpose? The one thing.
I'd say that the need for comfort and safety is what holds most men back.
All right. And one of the questions I ask is about a mentor role, but because I know that you work with David Deida, I obviously want to focus on him.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a moment, an aha moment, a light bulb moment that you've had with David where you guys were sharing, you guys were talking about something and boom.
Well, I'd say that, I mean, I have several people who I think have inspired me greatly and have made me better humans. And David is definitely a better human. David is definitely on top of that list, because everything we talk about as far as integrity and follow through and direction and strength and purpose and clarity, David has. He's an incredible practitioner of what he talks about. He's very clear, very decisive, very much able to hold a purpose and follow through. And so in all the years of first going to workshops and then assisting him and now teaching with him, and we teach out of my property in Ojai, the thing that always astounds me is his incredible clarity and the strength of his purpose.
Huh, I really like that. And now this is a tough question as it is for everyone, but what are your three most influential books and why?
Ooh, that is challenging because I read a lot.
I bet. How many books do you read in a month?
Probably 10, about, give or take. Um, I'd say probably one of the most influential books for me for many reasons is Women Who Run with the Wolves, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, which doesn't feel like, it's hard to explain why when you know what the book is about. But to me, the way she informs her storytelling and transmits something beyond the story that she's telling, and how she opens people to a truth and a depth is incomparable. I mean, she's one of my heroes, and I would say also somebody who's influenced me very much. Another book that's completely different, this is more in the business realm, Getting Things Done, David Allen, I think changed my life and my productivity beyond anything that I can, imagine. And then probably after that, of course, David's books, because I kind of, I gorged myself on them for many years. And, I think he's just an incredibly beautiful writer. Blue Truth is probably my most favorite book of his. It's just an incredibly poetic, amazing book. So I guess I'll leave it at that. But I would say the other book that I absolutely just love is The Wayfinder, which is Wade Davis. So it's an incredibly powerful book into different cultures and how different cultures find their way. So it's a good one.
All right, those look like really good books there. And if anyone would like to pick up those books for free, you can go to kfmbook.com and you can get one of those books for free, and that's with Audible. So kfmbook.com, and you can pick up a free audiobook. And now you talked about books that have helped you on your journey. So would you say are two or three life skills that you need in order to succeed in your field?
Well, number one life skill for me is that I have to essentially constantly work on not having resistance, because to me the level of productivity I have to maintain day in, day out to get everything done requires all the energy I have. And so what I realized early on is that resistance costs energy and zaps energy. And the more resistance you have, the less energy you have available to getting things done. And so my constant practice is to essentially to say yes to anything that I need to do. Or if I really don't want to do it, not do it. But anything I have to do has to be a yes. So that would be probably my biggest life skill. The other life skill that, well, I could talk about two things. One would be what I have innately. The other thing is something that I still have to learn. And the thing that I have to learn is giving people precise feedback, people who work for me, precise feedback so that they can improve their productivity. That's something that's very hard for me. So that's a life skill that I'm constantly polishing.
Huh, really good skills there. And now I have a scenario for you, Michaela. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell her to do and what would you tell her not to do?
I would tell her not to waste time on educating beyond the point where she can experience things, or where she can just dive in and learn by doing. That's the one thing that I would definitely tell her not to do. And the one thing to tell her to do is not worry as much about doing things perfect.
Huh, yeah, I could see that being a good skill there. And now looking back at your life and the things that you've accomplished, the people that you've helped and transformed, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Mhm. Well, I think the importance is, to me, the thing that made me successful is perseverance and discipline, and the ability to stick with it regardless if it felt like it was failing, or even when it was failing, and to go beyond my personal preference into whatever comes next. So using failure not as a defeat, but as a feedback mechanism for adjusting reality.
I like that. And, that's going to conclude the knowledge round. So let's go into what's exciting you now today. Like, what are you doing? What's getting you out of bed in the morning?
Ah, wow. Well,
So many
I wouldn't
things.
even know where to start. I'm incredibly blessed in many domains. One of which is I live on a beautiful piece of property that is farmed. That we have all kinds of fruit and vegetables and avocado orchards, and have lots of animals. So one of the things that motivates me is my care for my animals and my land, and the little postage stamp of earth that I get to call my own. So that's a major motivation for getting out of bed. And then from there, I have a few really fantastic clients where I'm highly motivated to serve them and apply whatever I've learned to their growth and knowledge. And then, recently, particularly, I'm really excited because I've stepped up my teaching quite substantially. I'm teaching more this year and next than I ever have. And I'm doing a lot of European events as well. And teaching much more advanced classes as well, and not just entry level things. So I have a huge thrust towards teaching and creating new content and delivering content. My workshops are all experiential, so I'm constantly coming up with new exercises and new ways to embody and strengthen and learn about thrust and surrender and all those things. So often I wake up and the first thing I think about is exercises and things I can do and how I can deliver certain things, and that gets me very excited.
Wow, and you are doing so much. So how can my audience follow up with you moving forward?
Well, my full schedule is available on my website. I don't know if you're going to list that on your website,
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
going to create a blog post.
yeah, okay, so then I don't have to spell out my name. So, but it's michaelaboehm.com, and on that website there is all the teaching I do, both online. I do some online classes, in person, all my European events. I'm probably going to do quite a bit of Europe and also Australia next year. And then in addition, we've just started that again. I'm publishing David's audios. We just published the first new audio in 4 years. And it's a really amazing piece where he's working with a couple in an advanced intensive, and he's giving very specific direction on a man and a woman and how to open each other. And also my recordings are on that site. I have a very nice Q&A from a men's group in Amsterdam. They were very just really good men asking really good questions, and lots of things on women's pleasure and stuff like that. So there's lots going on.
Well, yeah, you got your hands full there, so I can see why reading David Allen's book on productivity is helping you.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably one of the most influential things. I was like, oh, thank God. And I've modified it some for my own needs, but I still pretty much follow that. It's great.
All right. Well, Michaela, I'm very honored to have you here on the show today. And we went into some really good topics. We dived deep into the topics, and I know that we provided, some good value and a lot of transformation for some of the listeners. So I appreciate your time, Michaela.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. And that's going to wrap up episode 107 with Michaela Boehm. Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you be a part of a thriving community of men who want to crush it in all aspects of life. I'm on a mission here to inspire millions of guys, and with your help, we're going to make a dent in the universe. Check out knowledgeformen.com for a ton of free content that's designed to help you live a remarkable life. Again, that's knowledgeformen.com. I hope to see you there. And always remember, 2014 is the official year of the crush, where we take action to get the life we've always dreamed of. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and until next time, let's do it.